It's been 10 years since Evan and I got married. Our early years were full of passion and romance, but over time it faded, giving way to habit and routine. We lived in a cozy house in the suburbs, surrounded by responsibilities that gradually consumed our time and energy. Each day was like the last. We woke up in the morning, had breakfast together, and then went our separate ways. In the evening, we met for dinner, discussing work and everyday trivialities. But something important had disappeared. I felt like I was losing my connection with Evan, and it troubled me. One evening, while Evan was reading a book in the living room, I decided to tell him about my feelings. I felt an attraction to other men and knew I couldn't hide it any longer. I needed to talk to him honestly, even if it meant risking our marriage. "Evan," I began, sitting across from him on the couch, "I need to talk to you." He put down his book and looked at me with interest. "What's going on, Jess?" I feel attracted to other men," I said, mustering all my courage, "and I don't want to hide it from you." His expression changed. At first, he looked shocked, then his face became more focused. I saw the pain beginning to form in his eyes, but he tried to remain calm. "Why are you telling me this now?" he asked, his voice steady but with an undertone of tension. "Because I want to be honest with you. I don't want to destroy our marriage with secrets and lies. I love you, Evan, but I feel we need to change something to bring back our passion." We sat in silence as Evan processed my words. I felt anxiety building up inside me, but I knew it was the right step. We needed to find a solution together to save our marriage and bring back what we had lost. After our first conversation, the tension in the air became almost palpable. I knew we had to continue this discussion, otherwise our life would remain in limbo. I noticed Evan had become more withdrawn, lost in his thoughts, which only heightened my anxiety. One evening, as we sat in the kitchen over a cup of tea, I gathered the courage to continue what I had started. "Evan, we need to talk seriously," I began, lowering my gaze to my hands folded on the table. "I've been thinking about it," he replied, his voice quiet but resolute. "Can you tell me more?" I took a deep breath, collecting my thoughts. "It's not that I want someone else instead of you. It's more about wanting to feel something that's missing between us. I see how other men look at me, and it awakens something in me that I haven't felt in a long time. It doesn't mean I love you any less. I just want to understand how to bring back the passion we once had." Evan was silent for a long time, contemplating my words. Finally, he spoke. "Jess, I love you. It hurts to hear this, but I want to understand. We need to find a way to deal with this. But how do you propose we do that?" I knew the moment had come. What if we try polyamorous relationships? It would give us the opportunity to feel something new without destroying our marriage. His eyes widened in surprise. "Are you serious? That's pretty radical. But if that's what it takes to save us, I'm willing to at least discuss it." "Yes, I'm serious," I confirmed. "I'm not saying it will be easy, but I believe it can bring us back to life. We can set rules that work for both of us." We talked about it for a long time, weighing all the pros and cons. I saw how difficult it was for him to accept this idea, but at the same time, he understood that our relationship needed change. This conversation was the first step toward restoring our connection. The next few days passed in tense silence. Evan and I went about our usual activities, but something inevitable hung in the air like a storm ready to break. I knew he was mulling over my words, and I felt the moment for the next step had come. One evening, as we sat in the living room, I decided to bring up the topic again. "Evan, we need to return to our conversation," I began, looking him directly in the eyes. He nodded, putting down the newspaper. "I've been thinking about it a lot. But it's too radical, Jess. Polyamorous relationships are not something I can easily transition to." "I understand," I said, trying to sound as calm as possible. "But please hear me out. I'm not saying it has to be forever. I'm proposing we try it out, see how it works for us. It might bring back the passion we've lost." Evan sat silently, contemplating my words. I could see the struggle within him. His love for me and desire to save our marriage battled with his fears and doubts. "All right," he finally said. "Let's discuss this in more detail. What are your thoughts?" "First of all, we need to set clear rules," I began. We both need to feel comfortable and secure. It has to be mutual consent, and we must always be honest with each other. Evan nodded, listening intently. And what's next? We can try it for a while, meet other people, see how it works. If it doesn't work out, we can always go back to our usual life, but with the understanding that we did everything we could to save our marriage. He sighed, leaning back in his chair. This sounds crazy, Jess, but if you think it might help, I'm willing to try. But we need to be careful. Of course, I agreed, feeling relieved. We'll take it step by step, not rushing into anything. The main thing is our connection and trust in each other. That evening, we began our journey toward polyamorous relationships. It was both frightening and exciting, but I believed it would help us bring back our love and passion. Our initial discussion about polyamorous relationships became the starting point for an experiment that would change our lives. I knew that the first step had to be something simple, so we could assess our feelings and reactions. We decided that I would try flirting with Tom, my colleague, at a company-organized party. Evan reluctantly agreed, though I saw a shadow of worry in his eyes. We agreed that he would be present at the party and observe my actions. It wasn't easy for either of us, but I believed it was necessary. When the day of the party arrived, I prepared meticulously. I chose a dress that accentuated my curves and applied makeup that gave me confidence. Evan watched me as I got ready, and I saw a mix of excitement and anxiety in his gaze. The party took place in a large hotel banquet hall, and upon arrival, I immediately noticed Tom. He was charming and friendly, as always. Evan took a seat to the side, but I knew he was watching me closely. I approached Tom and started a casual conversation. We talked about work, shared stories about our colleagues, and I caught his interested glances. Flirting came naturally, and I noticed how Tom responded to my signals. Evan, sitting nearby, seemed calm, but I knew he was observing intently. It was important for me that he saw I still loved him, despite flirting with someone else. At one point, Tom suggested we get a drink together, and I agreed. We moved to a quieter area with fewer people and continued our conversation. I felt the flirtation growing, and I was curious how this would affect my relationship with Evan. The evening passed quickly, and soon it was time to leave. Evan and I returned home in silence, each lost in our own thoughts. I felt mixed emotions, satisfaction from the successful experiment and concern for the future of our marriage. When we got home, Evan was the first to break the silence. "So how was it for you?" he asked, his voice calm, but I heard the tension in his tone. "It was interesting," I replied. "I felt alive, but it was also important that you were there and saw it." Evan nodded, contemplating my words. "It was difficult for me too, but I'm glad we tried. We need to keep discussing our feelings and be honest with each other." We talked late into the night, sharing our thoughts and emotions. This experiment showed that we could move forward if we remained open and supportive of each other. It was the beginning of a new phase in our relationship, full of challenges and opportunities. The next evening, after our first experiment, the tension between us remained. Evan was withdrawn, and I was trying to find the words to express my feelings and thoughts. We sat in the living room, lost in our thoughts, when I decided we needed to discuss what had happened. "Evan, let's talk about last night," I began, trying to sound confident. He looked at me, and I noticed his eyes were full of doubts and worries. "Of course, Jess," he replied, his voice quiet but resolute. I took a deep breath, gathering my thoughts. "Last night was difficult for me. I felt something new, but at the same time it was hard. I couldn't stop thinking about you." Evan nodded, his face remaining serious. "It wasn't easy for me either. On one hand, I saw how happy you were with Tom, and that gave me hope. On the other hand, it was painful." "I understand," I said, trying to express my empathy. "I felt guilty too, but I think this is the first step. We need to keep talking and supporting each other." We sat together discussing every moment of the evening. Evan admitted that watching me brought up mixed feelings. He felt happiness for me, but also jealousy and concern. "Jess, I want to understand how this affects us," he said, looking into my eyes. I'm willing to try again, but we need to be careful. I agree, I replied, feeling relieved by his words. We need to move slowly and consider our feelings. This will help us understand if this lifestyle suits us. We talked for a long time, analyzing our feelings and thoughts. This experiment was just the first step, and although it was difficult, I believed we could find a way to restore our connection. We decided to continue experimenting, but to do it even more carefully and thoughtfully to avoid harming our relationship. After our first experiment and subsequent discussion, the tension between Evan and me continued to grow. We both felt that something was wrong but couldn't find a way to express our feelings. One evening, when I came home from work, I noticed Evan sitting in the living room with a vacant look, staring at the wall. I approached him, sat down next to him, and took his hand. "Evan, what's wrong?" I asked, feeling my heart clench with worry. He was silent for a long time, then finally spoke. "Jess, I'm not sure I can keep living like this," he began, his voice quiet and strained. "I thought I could handle this idea, but it turned out to be harder than I expected." I felt a wave of anxiety wash over me. "Evan, I understand that this is difficult, but I believe we can get through this together." He shook his head. "You don't understand, Jess. Seeing you with another man, it's tearing me apart. I'm jealous, and I feel worthless." Those words hit me hard. I knew this was difficult for him, but I didn't expect it to cause him so much pain. "I'm sorry, Evan," I said, trying to hold back my tears. "I didn't mean to hurt you. I thought this would help us rekindle our passion, but if it's destroying you, we need to find another way." He sighed, his eyes full of sadness. "Jess, I don't want to lose you either, but we need to find a solution that works for both of us." We talked for a long time, opening up to each other about our feelings and thoughts. I realized that this was unbearably hard for Evan. He wanted to support me, but his own feelings were too strong. "Maybe we should take a break and reconsider our strategy," I suggested. "We can try to find other ways to bring back the passion in our relationship without hurting each other." Evan nodded, his face softening. "Yes, let's try that. I don't want to lose us because of this." That evening we agreed to work on our relationship in other ways. We decided to spend more time together, plan joint activities, and look for new ways to rekindle our passion. It was a tough conversation, but I believed we had taken an important step toward reconciliation and restoring our connection. After our honest conversation, Evan and I decided to try a different approach to restoring our relationship. We decided to spend more time together and participate in joint activities. One of these activities was an art exhibition that our friends had invited us to. The exhibition was held in a large modern gallery space filled with vibrant colours and abstract forms. Evan held my hand, and I felt his support and presence beside me. We walked through the halls, discussing the artworks, when I noticed a familiar figure. It was Tom. "Evan, look, it's Tom," I said, pointing him out. Tom noticed us and approached with a broad smile. "Hi, Jessica. Hi, Evan. Great to see you here." "Hi, Tom," Evan replied, trying to hide his awkwardness. "Long time no see." We started talking about the exhibition, discussing the artworks, and sharing our impressions. After a while, Evan noticed a familiar artist and decided to approach him, leaving Tom and me alone. "So how do you like the exhibition?" Tom asked when we were alone. "Very interesting," I replied. "I've always loved art. How about you?" "I like it too," he said. "Especially this painting." He pointed to a large canvas in the corner of the room. "It reminds me of something indescribable and beautiful." We moved closer to the painting and continued our conversation. Tom was just as charming and interesting a conversationalist as before. I felt the same spark between us that I had felt at the party. "Jessica," Tom said softly, his voice full of tenderness. "I'm glad we met again. I've thought a lot about you since we last saw each other." "I have too, Tom," I replied, feeling my heart start to beat faster. "But I want you to know that my feelings for Evan remain just as strong." Tom nodded, his eyes full of understanding. "I know, Jessica, and I respect that, but I'm still glad we can spend time together." We continued our conversation, and I felt our interaction becoming more personal and deep. Time flew by, and when Evan returned, I felt a slight disappointment that my time with Tom had come to an end. "Everything okay?" Evan asked, putting his arm around my waist. "Yes, everything's fine," I replied, smiling at him. Tom and I were just talking about the painting. A few weeks had passed since our meeting with Tom at the exhibition. Evan and I continued to work on our relationship, trying to spend more time together and discuss our feelings. But I couldn't stop thinking about Tom. Every time I saw him at work or received a message from him, something inside me came alive. These feelings grew stronger, and I began to realize that there was something more between Tom and me than just friendship. It was a connection I couldn't ignore. At the same time, I saw how Evan was trying to accept the new reality, but his jealousy was becoming more noticeable. One evening, as Evan and I were having dinner, I decided to bring it up. "Evan, we need to talk," I began, putting down my fork and looking him in the eye. "About what?" he asked, clearly guessing what I was about to say. "About Tom," I replied, gathering my thoughts. "I feel something more for him than just sympathy, and I don't think it will go away on its own." Evan sighed and looked away. "I understand, Jessica. I see how you look at him, and it kills me inside. But I'm trying to accept it because I want you to be happy." Those words filled me with guilt, but also gratitude for his understanding. "Thank you, Evan. I know this is hard for you, but we need to be honest with each other." He nodded, his eyes full of pain and confusion. "Yes, you're right. But I need to figure out my own feelings and desires too. I'm starting to wonder if I need something more than just our relationship." Those words surprised me. I had always thought Evan was completely satisfied with our relationship, but now I saw that he too had his own needs and desires that he had been hiding. "What do you mean?" I asked, trying to understand his thoughts. "I don't know," he replied, shrugging. "Maybe I should try something new too. I want to understand what I really need to be happy." This conversation opened up new perspectives for us. We decided to support each other in exploring our feelings and desires. It was a difficult path, but I believed we could navigate it together. The next day, I met with Tom at work. We decided to have lunch together, and I felt our interaction becoming more personal and deep. Tom was attentive and caring, and I couldn't ignore the feelings he awakened in me. "Tom," I began, as we sat in a quiet corner of the cafe, "I need to be honest with you. I feel something more for you than just sympathy, and it's hard for me because I still love Evan." Tom took my hand and looked me in the eye. "Jessica, I feel something special for you too, and I'm ready to support you in any decision you make." Those words gave me confidence. I knew I was on the verge of something new and important. Now I needed to sort out my feelings and find a balance between my love for Evan and what I felt for Tom. It was a complex but necessary path to understanding and accepting myself and my desires. As our feelings and desires began to clarify, Evan and I decided that we needed to discuss the possibility of polyamorous relationships in more detail. Our conversations became increasingly candid and deep, and we tried not to overlook any detail. One evening, as we sat on the porch enjoying the warm summer evening, I brought up the topic. "Evan, I think we need to seriously talk about polyamory," I began, looking at him. "We've talked about it a lot, but it seems like it's time to make a decision." He nodded, sighing. "Yes, Jessica, you're right. We can't keep going in this limbo. We need to decide how we're going to move forward." "I know this is difficult," I continued, trying to find the right words. "But I believe that polyamory can give us the opportunity to feel something new and preserve our marriage." Evan pondered, his gaze distant. I needed time to realize this too, but I'm starting to understand that it might be a solution. We can set clear rules and boundaries so that we both feel comfortable. "Let's discuss these rules," I suggested. "For example, honesty and openness with each other. We need to share our feelings and emotions to avoid misunderstandings." He nodded. "And it's important to set boundaries so that we don't feel neglected or deprived. We need to respect and support each other." Meeting with Tom also helped me better understand what I really wanted. We often discussed our feelings and desires, and Tom always supported me in my decisions. This gave me confidence that I was on the right path. Evan also began to feel an attraction to other women. One day, he admitted to me that he had developed feelings for my sister Linda. "Jessica, I think I need to try something new too," he confessed. "I have a crush on Linda, and I want to see what might come of it." These words stirred mixed feelings in me. On one hand, I was glad that Evan had found someone who could bring him joy. On the other hand, it was hard to accept, especially since it was my single and hot sister. "I understand, Evan," I replied, trying to remain calm. "We agreed to be honest with each other, and I support you in this. But we need to talk to Linda and make sure she's on board too." We decided to try polyamorous relationships on a trial basis. It was a big step for both of us, but I believed it would help us find a new balance in our lives and relationship. We started seeing other people, adhering to our rules and boundaries. It was a challenging but interesting experience that helped us better understand ourselves and each other. We learned that polyamory could be not only a challenge, but also an opportunity for growth and development in our relationship. Overcoming social stereotypes and judgment was one of the most challenging tasks we faced on the path to polyamorous relationships. Many of our friends and family did not understand our choice and openly expressed their disapproval. Despite this, we tried to support each other and work on our new relationships. One of the key moments was the support from my sister, Linda, and Tom. They were both important parts of our new lifestyle and helped us overcome difficulties. We often met together, discussed our feelings, and shared experiences. These conversations helped us understand each other better and strengthened our bond. Nevertheless, new challenges continued to arise. Sometimes jealousy and insecurity would break through our calm, and we had to find ways to deal with these feelings. We learned to be honest and open with each other, discuss our fears and doubts, which helped us move forward. Over time, Evan began to realize that he genuinely enjoyed polyamorous relationships. He relished the freedom and new opportunities they brought. However, he also began to feel that our relationship had become less important to him. He spent more and more time with Linda and other women, and I saw him drifting away from me. One evening, as we sat on the porch discussing our day, Evan suddenly spoke up. "Jessica, I think we need to talk," he began, looking me in the eye. "Of course, what's wrong?" I asked, feeling anxiety building inside me. "I've been thinking a lot lately," he continued, "and I've come to the conclusion that I really like polyamorous relationships. But I've also realized that I want to continue them without you." Those words hit me like a blow. I couldn't believe he was saying this. "Are you serious, Evan?" I asked, trying to hold back my tears. "Yes," he replied, his eyes full of determination. "I don't want to hurt you, but I feel this is the right path for me. Linda and I have become very close, and I want to develop our relationship." I remained silent, trying to process what I had heard. I knew our relationship had changed, but I didn't expect this outcome. "I understand," I finally said, feeling tears rolling down my cheeks. "If this is what makes you happy, I can't stand in your way." Evan nodded, his face softening. "Thank you, Jessica. You will always be an important part of my life, but now I need to follow my own path." We spent our last evening together, discussing our future and saying goodbye. It was painful, but I understood that it was necessary for our future happiness. When Evan left, I was left with Tom. He supported me, helping me cope with the pain and disappointment. Our relationship became even stronger, and I felt that together we could overcome any difficulties. This path was full of challenges, but I believed I could find happiness in my new relationship and continue moving forward. Tom and I started a new chapter in our lives, filled with love, understanding, and mutual support.